starting, and it says recording. All right, here we go. So, all right, thanks, man. Haven't had one of these freeform discussions with you for a while here. Gonna turn this out to the viewers. Feel free to clip it any way you like. So I just wanted to ask you about a couple things here, and again, thanks for doing an interview here, David. This is David DuByne of Adapt 2030, one of our our pal YouTube channels here. And thanks for the multiple David DuByne bumps.
Hey, when I see good quality and quality content that can help people understand the situation more, I am incredibly grateful that the information's out there because, we're all in this together. You're not going to run somewhere and escape this grand solar minimum. So the more informed people there are, incredible. But if there's good information out, I always want to share that so other people can find the message they resonate with even easier. And then it's like that. It's a snowball. And then people can share and then search and research. And hey, great channel, by the way. I highly recommend it.
Hey, thanks, man.
smAshomAsh.
Cheers. I wanted to ask you about just some basic stuff that maybe you never cover on the channel, such as like, what's your daily life like? What do you do when you get up? Do you drink coffee? Do you have biscuits and bacon? Like what goes on when you first get up in the morning? What happens out there? And I believe you're located in Taiwan. What's your daily routine like?
I don't get up at any regular time any day because I live in this 24-hour world where, I might have a 3 a.m. interview and then I'll just stay up until I get tired and take a couple-hour nap somewhere in the afternoon. Or like tonight, I'm staying up all day and then I'm working all day tomorrow. So I'll go to bed, 7 p.m. tomorrow night. I usually get up and then I'll run out to my balcony and check the plants, see how the vertical tubes are going. I got about 25 different moringa plants out there. Yeah,
nice.
I just make coffee or maybe tea. I don't know, just soak up the morning for a minute and trying to organize my thoughts because there's so much going on at the moment and there's the continuous news feed and it's an avalanche of information coming in. So
sure. And we're gonna get to Hong Kong in a minute, but let's don't go there yet. I want to know about the inane stuff that your viewers may not know, like what's your couch upholstery look like, David? I mean, I'm pretty sure it's light in color, as I think I remember seeing a video from you sitting on it.
Yeah, it is. And I have the seeds in the back. And, I do make a list every day. For those of you go-getters out there, I do make a list every day before I go to bed of things that I need to do when I get up in the morning. And that's kind of, I have these pieces of glass attached to the walls that I write with markers on. So as I walk around in different places, I can see. It's better than a sticky note. It's much more easy to move stuff around. So then I just kind of like, all right, I need to do that today. I need to get the podcast app and then touch back with iTunes and see if they got that uploaded and hit back with. So that's for my tomorrow's task. I have a new podcast app coming out for not only iTunes and the whole Apple suite, but also for the Android, which will be available in both. So that's kind of my thing for tomorrow. And look, do you notice the amount of news coming out? Like, record snows everywhere. There's snowing in British Columbia and record cold across Russia, and they just had frost down in Indonesia on Mount Bromo. So, these are the kind of stories I'm looking at, scratching my head saying, what? And then there's, record snows down where they haven't seen snow in more than 25 years down in Australia. Like, you should see the picture of the bus that's buried up to the windows. Buses are pretty tall. So these are the kind of things I'm trying to scrape through for today's news. I'm going to still need to do a video. It's, 12:30 going on. No, it's 12 midnight here, and I'm still trying to get images together to get a video together, and then I got to do my podcast, and I got about 15 emails to do.
Oh, geez. Well, ignore mine because mine's already been handled. Just delete the one I sent you.
I do, in all honesty, I really try to read through every single email. It's like trying to, drink out of a fire hose because I get more than 1,000 emails and comments per day. I try to like at least scroll through and read everything. I may not have time to respond to everything, but I really do try to read everything. And any trolls, I just delete them right away. But if you do send some solid comment in, I try my best to respond if I can. But
yeah.
It's overwhelming at times, the amount of information coming in, not on the news feeds, but also with the amount of comments and then the amount of emails,
All right. And real quick, what do you like to do for recreation? I know you used to, I think you said you race mountain bikes as well as you like to surf. Anything else you'd like to add to your list of recreational activities?
Yeah, hiking for sure. And now this hiking, Yeah, I used to go hiking just as you go hiking, but now I've turned it into sort of wild foraging where, we have our book, we
Right,
talk to
right.
people, we've gone with people before. So now when we go through, me and some friends, we always are looking for what we can eat. We'll even go off trail a little bit, but you got to look for the snakes and things. But we'll go off
Good one.
trail and yeah, but we'll go off trail and we will look around and see what we can find wild foraging. So hiking's taken on a new meaning for me. It's great to get the exercise, but it's a food, quest as well at the same time. So I'm trying to, learn what I can as we move through, because I really think wild foraging is going to be part of what we're going to have to adapt and move into. Where anywhere you can get like a nettle, stinging nettle, great vitamin C source, good green veggie. Why not? Dandelions, whatever, leaves, anything you can find. But we got these special vines out here and ferns and all kind of stuff that you can collect through as you walk around. And canna lilies, you pick them up. They got these purple roots in them, really tasty. So yeah.
I did not know that. That's a new one on my list. Have you heard about, to shift gears a little bit, have you heard about the new Prager University lawsuit versus YouTube?
I had seen snippets of that, but that's an ongoing thing. You have way more information than I do on that. So I would love to hear what you have to say about it, because I know there was an ongoing, another section of people were trying to unionize against YouTube censorship. And yeah, so tell me about PragerU. What's happening there?
Well, ultimately what it's coming down to is it's kind of the same argument at the root of things that you would expect it to be, where YouTube, Twitter, and Google especially, and Facebook, they all operate underneath all the protections of being both a publisher as well as a public forum. And so that's kind of what it comes down to. You can't have it both ways. You got to, for instance, if you expect to just write an article for the Washington Times, or for, let's just say the New York Times, to make it as leftist as you could possibly imagine, you're just going to write an article. The New York Times has to decide whether or not they're going to print that, because they're a publisher. Their editor might totally chop it up and change it all around, right? I mean, you're a journalist, you're aware of this. But when you put up a video on YouTube or put something up on Facebook, um, that's you're just expecting that to just go up there. And Facebook, Google, Twitter, and YouTube are not responsible for that content that you put up there. So in other words, the example that PragerU used on their video, and I think it's their most recent one. So if you look that up, you'll easily find it right there. It's literally just PragerU versus YouTube. I think you'll find it right away, because YouTube's not dumb enough to continue to try to censor an organization like that. But they have hundreds of videos right now that are restricted the same way that pornography or excessive violence would be restricted, because YouTube doesn't agree with PragerU's ideas. Now, granted, PragerU is leans to the right of center, but a lot of their videos are completely apolitical. And I don't know about you, but I've got friends who are utter leftists. I wouldn't have them shut down on any social media. Now, I've been blocked by people that used to be my friends, probably still are, but they refuse to see what we say on social media because of political differences. But that's a different thing than owning, well, for instance, in Google's case, they own about 60% of the servers in the whole world. So for Google to be, and of course we've been railing on them for months, since probably something like December of last year on our YouTube channel, and on all of our other social media long before that, starting with the 2016 election, when it became so obvious that they were clearly electioneering, for which they're also being sued by Tulsi Gabbard's presidential campaign. So, and the list goes on and on. However bad you think it is, man, it's worse.
It is, and I can tell you some personal story here. Over the last 2 days, I've been working with my channel manager, and they're taking a look at the metrics, because we want to start branding the channel and doing a couple other things with merchandise. Not the kind of merch like you would think T-shirts, but grow units and courses and a few other things, and getting
Nice.
some SEO help to try to put up a suite of products, etc.
Cool.
So over the last couple of days, yeah, I've been kind of busy doing that. And here's what we found out. I used to get 26% of my traffic from suggested videos 3 months ago, and now I get 9%. Also, what we found, and another thing then, Danny, let me throw this here for you.
Yeah.
When you did the auto search, when you go into YouTube and you put in the search bar, like in the beginning, even a few months ago, when you put in ADAP and then it would autofill the T with the 2030. I would come right near the top 2, 3, 4 choices. Now when you even when you put adapt to 0, I'm not even on the list. It doesn't even come up for 3.0. And I encourage you to check it out yourself, because when you put adapt to 0, you get adapt all these other numbers that come up there, and then you have to actually type in the 3.0 now if you want to find it. So that's my own personal story.
Nice.
So
yeah. You regularly get the badge of honor, and I just sent Christian Westbrook an email yesterday or 2 days ago that he got we call it the global warming badge of honor for you listeners out there or viewers who are not aware. When we talk about how the planet does not appear to be warming and there's 9 feet of ice from coast to coast on Greenland, we tend to get this global warming link to Wikipedia underneath our YouTube videos. It's like a feature that was just thrown in there to, I guess, add some brilliant wisdom by the YouTube gods to the video, so that you can click on global warming and figure out why it is that the planet's so hot, and why CO2 is making the planet so hot. Oh, I can barely even say it anymore, man.
I know, it's laughable. It's truly laughable with all the new information coming out and the noticeable differences in temperatures and snowfalls. Oh, but it's heating oceans. It's heating. We should have seen the same exact thing in 1998 with the spike with the El Nino. That 1998 temperature, for those of you out there, is only 1/10 of a degree cooler than what we experienced in the 2016 El Nino. So you got these two giant heat spikes that stick out on the graph since 1979. The 1998 and the 2016, they're nearly identical. It's in dispute. Is it a full 1/10 of a degree, or is it even less? Is it 1/100ths of a degree or something? But we should have seen the same evaporative patterns. We should have seen the same snowfall. If it was really heating oceans, we should have seen the same exact outcomes, but we're not. It's just starting now. Really coincidentally, I wonder why. Maybe it's changes in the grand solar minimum. The sun, our electromagnetic field on our planet, look at the magnetic fields collapsing and reducing, and incredible changes happening on our planet and sun, yet it's got to be CO2. You can't look at a second causation. See, that's what really irks me a little bit. I thought it was science. I thought it was supposed to be talked about, debated, but there's no debate. It's either you agree with CO2 or you get shut down. What about the second causation? Possibly something from the sun that's been talked about for thousands of years, how it affects our societies and civilization. Nope, it's only CO2. Shut up.
I hear you. And we look at the jet stream every day on our channel, and it's getting disrupted now in the southern hemisphere again. It was pretty coherent for the past month or so, and now it's getting very meridional there. It's been convective forces instead of a real jet stream up in the northern hemisphere up here for the last 2 months or so. And we've been looking at it on Null School for a solid month every day on the space weather videos. But man, oh man, it's I forgot where I was going with this, but let's shift gears again. I got another question for you. What are your thoughts on, as I'm sure everybody will be interested, Hong Kong?
Yeah, now the British handover in 1997 to China. Hong Kong is now part of China in writing, one party or one country, two systems. It's supposed to revert 100% back with 100% control, 2047. Now there's a lot going on there, and the banking industry and the shipping industry is definitely going to be affected if anything happens there where there's any kind of live rounds that go off during a protest. Like there almost was one at the airport. And what they're finding now is if they get police officers and pull them to the side by themselves, groups of 6, 7, 8, 10 protesters, they can separate them literally from the bunch, grab them, strip their helmets off them, strip their batons away from them, take their handcuffs and their gear away, and then leave them, just completely armorless over there on the left, right? Well, they did that with one guy. They pulled his baton away, started hitting him with his own baton, and then he pulled out his service revolver and pointed it out there, fired a couple shots in the air. But if he would have let one loose by accident and hit somebody right in there, like the police would have been killed for sure. Like it would have turned not from and then you got to see these videos when they push the police out of the Hong Kong airport. Like they ran for their lives literally into the buses and tried to get away, and they were blocking the streets and smashing rocks through the windows of the police buses. Like you got hundreds and hundreds of riot police in full gear got pushed back onto the buses and had to run for their lives because they were completely outnumbered by tens of thousands of protesters. So it just shows that Yeah, go ahead.
That's Hong Kong police. That's not Chinese officials. That's Hong Kong's own local police, essentially.
Yeah, but they're finding that there's infiltrators inside there now, and people who have 2 or 3 different types of ID. They did find regular military police trying to camouflage themselves. They caught 3 people in the Hong Kong airport that were, either pretending to be journalists from China, and then they found second sets of ID which showed they were military, and they found 3 of them in there. So there were probably more. If they captured 3, for sure there were more.
Huh.
No, right. No, Daniel, when I say captured, I mean they caught them and they duct taped them, and they had them surrounded so nobody can come in. And they started interrogating them, and they got all their IDs out, and they showed, yeah, look at this person. He's supposed to be a reporter, but why does he have a second military ID on him? And they started to show this stuff live on TV. And once that did, then they kind of triangulated in the airport where they were, and then they sent all the riot police in. Well, once they regained control after day 2. They literally lost complete control of that airport. That's why the flights were stuck.
Yeah.
Couldn't go. They lost control of the airport for 2 straight days. There were so many protesters outnumbering the police where they had no possibility going in except using live rounds to get those people out of there. Now, this is where it's coming to. You got millions and millions and millions of people, and the protests keep getting bigger every day now.
Right. And what's the, just real quick, what's the political goal of the protesters versus the government?
Well, the initial stated goal was to retract the extradition.
The extradition. Yeah, right.
They say, that's well, they pulled it back, but they won't completely shelve it and take it off the books like they wanted. But now it's turned into something much greater. So even if they do that little, just token maneuver to say, hey, we're going to remove the extradition law, it's gone far beyond that. Now it's true about democracy movement, suffrage, and there's all these things that they're looking for now. So they open the can of worms, and it's never going back in. Like that little tiny piece, if they would have just taken that bill off the table right away, you would have none of this. But now it's becoming the rallying cry, and again, that little token maneuvers, they're going to still continue to protest.
Okay, so, I think I'm finally starting to understand this now. So it's basically all about the route. I mean, the fact that China is trying to make judicial inroads to allow people to be extradited from Hong Kong because they're doing stuff like undermining the Communist Party or something like that, right?
No, writing on Twitter and Facebook, and if they disagree with you in the Communist Party, they can come in and swoop you in the middle of the night with black-clad, black van type of people just because you wrote a post in Facebook they don't agree with. That kind of extradition.
Oh, you mean like I'd already be in jail if I was there?
Yeah, so would I, for sure, absolutely. Oh yeah.
Nice. Okay. Oh geez. All right. So let's shift gears again here to respect everybody's time and keep the clip as short as possible. What about crop losses? 5 minutes or less, David.
I spoke with a couple. I spoke with 2 different brokers, and they are talking about the bean demand as these stories in Russia where they're now saying that Russia will not have enough soya bean to supply China's internal demand. So they were saying they only have enough for weeks to supply China, that they're going to have to look elsewhere. So
let me stop you there. Now, I heard at least 3 days ago that China has now moved to buying soy from Brazil.
Correct, but they don't have that much.
Oh, I see. Okay. They're sourcing it from various places because Australia is now a net importer of grains.
Correct, but now you got the arbitrage carry trade going on where people are picking up things at a discount out of the U.S. They're just transshipping them, say, to Brazil, throwing them on a different boat, and then it's going over to China. So
well, as long as tariffs are dodged, I'm happy because tariffs are stupid.
Yeah, it looks like they're beating their chests, fighting each other, but really, I mean, grains are still getting delivered to China from the United States. I mean, look at the pipeline of all the grains that have been around for the last couple of years. Large.
Well, that's a good thing, man. I'm glad to hear that they are. It's like either pay the tariffs or you know what I mean. Like it's not worth having a food shortage for anybody to be like, we're not going to capitulate on this country's tariffs. We're going to impose revenge tariffs. It's so dumb. It's like, hey, we're going to all stab our own people and gain nothing except a complete waste of money and more money into the pockets of grafty governments. It's perfect. It makes slim to zero sense. And even if it is a bargaining chip, it still is going to raise the prices over the short term for the very people that need prices to be low the most. At the same time as a food shortage, while inflation kicks in, it's thanks Trump. Smart. If you buy Greenland, please book me a room at the hotel.
But it's a good way to cover the crop shortages, because now with all the tumultuous happenings across the planet, it's just explained that food prices would rise. It's just explained that there'd be a shortage. You know, I'm starting to find the value of the perception of stability in our society is far outweighed, and it has far higher value than the actual monetary equivalent now.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think this is where we're going to now. The perception of stability has more value than the actual cash, because they look at this fiat system collapsing everywhere. I mean, every red flag that you can possibly imagine is out at the moment. They're talking about bond yields inverting like they did in 2009, where you have to pay where they're getting a higher rate for close in, 1 to 2 year bonds versus something 20 to 30 years out, which is the opposite of usually what happened. You get a higher yield going out. So they're saying the same thing happened in 2009. We got all these Chinese banks underwater that are definitely connected into Hong Kong, and then Hong Kong's connected way back out into everything else internationally. So is it really organically happening, or is this an engineered thing, smoke and mirrors show on both sides being complicit to help each other's societies pretend that there's stability and blaming everybody else, but in reality it's because of the grand solar minimum food shortages?
Yeah,
I'm starting to think like this now. I really am.
It's true, man. And part of it's a good thing. The fact that I don't think Trump understands the Federal Reserve. President Trump, I'm a supporter of President Trump at this point, but he's got issues when it comes to certain stuff. Matters economics, I don't really think he understands it primarily. And the Fed is more in charge of the government than the government is in charge of the Fed. Because in order for the government to do the things that the government does, it has to have money to do it, because it doesn't take too long for people to quit their jobs when they're not getting paid anymore. And ultimately, the government has no money in its coffers right now unless that's been allocated in the first place. So, to quote Bill Clinton back in the mid 90s, when he wanted to bomb someplace or do some kind of military maneuver, and he couldn't do it, he was very surprised to realize that his military procedures were based on the tradings of a bunch of bond traders. And, I think you're right about the manipulation. When those bond yields did that, it probably wasn't just a coincidence that it happened right at that time. It was almost like the media pushed that out to suggest that there was going to be a recession. And hey, if you look at my thumbnails, I look at the fundamentals. I mean, I was a day trader back in the early 2000s. So my thumbnail from the day before everybody else reported it was like "Recession Looms" was part of my title of my space weather video that day. And part of the reason why we cover space weather is because all this stuff's related, man. Whether it's the economy, the sun, the economy, and politics, they're all very much related. And that's part of the reason why our channel is trying to figure out why the sun does what it does, because we're already convinced that that's largely in charge of what happens on the planet. We would prefer to know why the sun does what it does, because of obvious cause and effect relationships. And that's why we don't think CO2 is worth studying, except that it's healthy to have in your bloodstream and the air. And if we could have it at about 1,000 parts per million, the planet would probably be better off.
I'll go up on those totals. I think around 1,200 would be optimal, just like it is in greenhouses to get the highest yield out. I'll go for 1,200 parts per million. Yeah, that's my call right there. I'd love to have that saturation level. We wouldn't have to worry about the grand solar minimum agricultural declines, because natural plant yields would come up 3x or so, maybe 4x in some species.
And when do they?
Plant food.
Like 430 parts per million right now, and if they drop down to 380, plants stop growing entirely or something like that. That's scary. More CO2. I'm failing to be scared. I don't know.
I heard it was I heard it was between 250 and 280, and the further away we can get away from that extinction level event line, the better. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Let's keep going north on that. It's plant food.
All right, so let's keep it moving here. Anything about space weather or cosmology on your mind?
Well, after seeing some of these new petroglyphs and hieroglyphs, and I'm talking about Egyptian hieroglyphs going back into Sumerian all the way into, you know, Native American, what we'd consider petroglyphs, and Hawaiian glyphs on the side. I'm starting to notice that a lot of them with looks like the sun with a different kind of either 56 rays coming out, or the sun in the center of concentric circles, or something that looks like a spiral. They witnessed the super flare or the micronova off our sun, and that was what it is. So, you know, I'm looking back into that going, all right, is the grand solar minimum the first step in, and then we're going to get this magnetic pole reversal, and then something from the sun happens? Because this magnetic step down, this electromagnetic coupling, you know, whatever's happening on our planet is happening too fast. So magnetic pole reversal coming in full on. So, you know, somebody talked to me the other day and go, hey, man, maybe you only got like the first few acts of the entire play. This grand solar minimum might only be the very first act of, and then it's going to couple with this magnetic pole reversal, and then the culmination will be a micronova or a super flare from the sun, resetting everything on this planet, and then we start from fresh again. And that's what the ancient traditions talked about, and that's what I've been thinking about.
All right, I hear that, and that's why you should watch today's space weather video on our channel to give ourselves a call back again, because we're taking deep dives into cosmology, man, because we really want to know what's going on with the sun. And there are certain theories, let's just say, out there in the YouTube community that aren't correct, in my opinion. So yeah, you should really watch today's, because it goes deep into Milky Way scale cosmology and beyond, out to 500 to 800 million light years.
Yeah, where's the emanation point from? Because, you know, there's got to be a start point. It could be a torus wave. Fine, I understand that.
It could
probably
be,
it is torus. But where's the origination point? You know, where is that originating from? All these convective currents coming through the plasma across our galaxies, even into our own local star region here in our own star. Like, where everything's in a torus anyway, but where is that originating from? That's my most interesting question. I don't know.
Well, everything is not in a torus. That's the thing. So things are fractals of each other. That is indeed the case, right? So in our solar system, we live on the toroidal field from the solar equator, but there are two totally different kind of fields that come out of those solar poles called the Z fields. We measure them in the BZ and in the solar wind data that we look at every day. You know, the BT-BZ, the BT is the total strength of the overall fields, and the BZ is the amount of that field coming from the one pole or the other if there's a disparity, right? So when you see the BZ is negative, it's coming from the south pole. If it's positive, it's coming from the north pole. Well, those are the other mysterious fields that govern what happens in our universe, right? If you look at the longest galactic strings in the universe, they emanate from Z fields of galaxies. For instance, if you're looking at a quasar, right, the brightest among the most bright galaxies that we see in the universe, you could call them active galactic nuclei. And these are very bright objects, and it's because we're looking right down those objects' Z fields. And that's a completely different environment than being on the equatorial field that's created by the interaction of the north and south pole of that Z field. Because part of that energy kind of rains back down into where you live, which creates the B field, which is the interplanetary magnetic field in our solar system. But if you start to look at galactic scale cosmology, you can see that these Z fields stretch out hundreds of millions of light years. And these are what connect other galaxies to your galaxy. In other words, a galaxy 800 million light years away could be responsible for the sun's behavior. So what we really ultimately have to do is start to crunch insane amounts of data in order to try to figure out if there's some kind of a signature in a thing like Cygnus A, which just happens to be the second most powerful radio source in the entire sky, second only to the sun itself. We have to question the possibility that if we're getting more radio signal from Cygnus A, perhaps it's a Z field that is in charge of the Earth's catastrophe cycle, as opposed to a B field, which would be the theory that the Earth's catastrophe cycle is caused by the sun wobbling up and down over the galactic current sheet. Sadly, it's a lot more complex than that. And the spiral arms of the galaxy are doing things that may not be evident in this kind of fractal theory that, oh, the sun is just acting like a planet on the galactic scale where the Earth acts like a planet on the solar scale, right? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. That probably sounded pretty convoluted, but I think I explained that.
Total sense. And how many thousands of light years away is Cygnus A?
Cygnus A is, well, see, when you look down a Z field of a thing, you can't tell, but fortunately, we're not looking down the radio jet of this thing. At least we don't think. So when we look at this, we see the radio jets. It looks like we're on Cygnus A's B field. You know, because we can see the jets are almost exactly perpendicular. So when you look at this at the center of that galaxy, it looks kind of dim. And part of the reason is because it's so energetic, is that things can't condense, because if they're moving too fast, things can't condense on these ionization pathways. So the matter that's coming out of the Z fields has to get very far away from the source of that energy in order for it to relax enough to condense into stuff that we can see and say, oh, hi, look, those are baryons, things like protons and, you know, other normal, what you would call matter. And so, but what's going on inside our galaxy is that it looks very much like Deneb, otherwise known as Cygnus X3, which is, you could call it a blazar because we're looking down the Z field of this object. This is much closer to us. This is 1/10 the distance, or possibly 1/100th the distance of the distance to Cygnus A. This is in our own galaxy, in the Cygnus arm of our own galaxy, but it seems to have the same signature as Cygnus A. So now it could still be some other object that's messing with the signature of both of those things. But considering the distance of this radio galaxy Cygnus A in comparison to the distance to Deneb, which is, we would call it a massive X-ray binary. Classical astronomers will say that it's a neutron star orbiting a Wolf-Rayet star, one of the largest, hottest stars. Deneb is also the largest single object visible to the naked eye. It's the tail of the swan in the constellation Cygnus, and it also appears to be the precessional North Pole at the other end of the precessional cycle. Well, if that's the case, maybe that coincides with Doug Vogt's theories. Perhaps it becomes the other end of the precessional cycle violently, caused by a magnetic reversal, as opposed to slowly wobbling over a 24,000-year cyclical pattern smoothly. Ultimately, the problem is you can't know. And again, we're right down the Z field of Cygnus X3, a.k.a. Deneb. And this is the reason why we can't figure out the distance to that object either. It's very hard when you're looking down a Z field to figure out how far away something is, because it's like you're looking into a maelstrom. You know, you're looking down a tornado essentially. So it's very difficult to use things like redshift to try to determine how far away the objects are.
And this whole cosmology, where you're getting into these catastrophism cycles as well. I mean, the way it's looking right now, we're on the edge of another one beginning, and I don't know how far we are into the beginning of this full cycle, and you know how many years this thing is going to roll out, with the beginning here with the grand solar minimum into the next steps of pole reversals, ultimately ending in something like you're talking about, Doug Vogt's mini nova or micronova from the sun, or a super flare, or you know what we see on the that has been left for us, literally carved in stone. So, you know, some of these places I look at, I say, I wonder if those were safety spots. Because if they were carving the actual, what they saw, the flare emanating from the sun, traveling toward Earth, and they carve that in stone, perhaps that's a safe spot up there. Because I don't mean like a safe space, but I mean really like that was obviously somebody put the carvings there so that they were still alive after they did.
And so it's possible that it's entirely arbitrary too, where the last time this happened, a safe spot was in this spot, but not in this spot. And, you know, you can't possibly know. And also, you talk about cycles a lot. You can't know the scale of the cycle that you're looking at. You could be looking at a 100-year cycle, which is nested in a 10,000-year cycle, which is nested in a 1 billion-year cycle that's been seen 0 times on the whole planet, or something like that. You have no idea the level, which is why things like Big Bang cosmology have so many problems. You have to have observational evidence to come up with a theory to prove or disprove something in science. So, but the geologic record clearly doesn't lie. It's like, well, we see a bunch of regular sediment, and then we see a thin layer of dense black mat, and then we see regular sediment, and then we see a dense layer of black matte. I mean, I've been studying this since the late 80s, and it's been freaking me out the whole time. And I, like so many other people, have been trying to figure it out without being in denial of actual facts. And oh my gosh, climate change. You can't read an article in any kind of a science journal without some kind of osmotic climate change nonsense slipped in there.
Yeah, no, and you look at those black matte, I mean, what's the periodicity in that? It looks like it's pretty even on its periodicity as a,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
there's a cycle inside there. So, you know, you're talking about cycles. Well, I was of the same volition when I first started the grand solar minimum searching here. I kept saying 400-year. Well, that's what I had to go on in the beginning, was a 400-year cycle. And then, you know, suddenly that widened out to 2,000 years based on more information and, you know, new patterns evolving on our planet that could be pegged back to certain rainfalls in certain areas and deserts on certain time scales. But now I'm looking back at 4,000 years.
And I love that about your content too, because the way you get all kinds of historic stuff thrown in there. It's so awesome because you're able to find that information about, like, oh, 2,000 years ago, this was a huge portion of Chinese farming, and now it's not. And now they're moving assets back to there again. Like, that stuff is super interesting because, you know, the farther you go back, the more likely a culture, if it's contiguous, has been able to sort of maintain this information. And I'm sure a lot of the stuff are going to withhold that for their own financial and geopolitical gain. So it's your channel is brilliant. When your videos come out, the notification bell has been pressed for all alerts, David.
And so many people are being knocked off. So if you're listening to this video, you might have to resubscribe, because that seems to be the theme of the day as well. Is people subscribe, they hit the notification bell, and they're like, dang, haven't seen anything come from you in months. Oh, and then I saw a random thing again, and I found out I was unsubscribed.
Yeah, you just missed
Imagine
60
that.
videos. Yeah, exactly. So any questions, comments, death threats?
No, none of that coming in yet. I don't think there would be either. It's just climate talking about science. I know there's some fanatics out there and psychopaths and stalkers, etc. But
right on, I hear you. And what about plugs? Anything you want to plug? Because we got to go. We're almost at 40 minutes, and thanks very much for the interview. But plug anything you want to plug.
smAshomAsh channel. You need to check this channel out. You need to watch it because there's valuable information here every day with the space weather updates and also the combining of ancient cycles. And, you know, the economy is so interwoven in this too. And you do a good job trying to, you know, intertwine economy as well as the politics a little bit inside there and what tech's doing to try to, you know, keep the truth from us. I mean, why should they be banning these types of videos? And I'm happy that you're trying to bring, you know, several different, you know, facets together in one single program where people can get the most bang for their buck. So call out, subscribe to the channel here.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. And be looking forward to seeing your next video. In fact, I probably missed one as you were probably uploading one as we spoke or something like that. So I'll be checking that out momentarily myself. And
I'm still trying to
go on.
I'm still trying to get the record snow for Australia. No, I don't have any videos, but Climate Revolution.
Okay.
You can check that out on
I'm still making my way through that myself, and so look for some analysis. In fact, I'll try to get you on another call when that happens. But so busy, at least the temperature is going to drop, and I'll be forced to not do things outside pretty soon, and I'll be able to produce a lot more content and hopefully do more calls like this.
Yeah, and make sure you try to tear that book apart, because that's really what's neat. It's not about the agreement. Oh yeah, we agree on this. We agree on this. It's about what you think could be improved or something that is missing from there that could give a wider picture. That's the real, you know, feedback we're looking for. Oh, it's a great book, great book. Nah, okay, great, thank you.
I agree.
And but find where it could plug the holes. That's the whole point.
Exactly. And you know, the first thing I did is I was like, wow, he cited me in this. All right. So I went to see what that was. And then I was like, oh my gosh, it's like hundreds of pages long, and the links are so long, and I wasn't prepared. So, but I'm going to get through it. I'm probably only through about 20 pages, honestly. But I promise you, I will get back to you, and it will appear on our daily videos.
Everything comes in good time. Whenever it's ready, it's ready.
Yeah. You know, it's like if you want to be sponsored by Right Guard or something, you better not walk around smelling weird. You gotta try the product out and figure out figure out what that entails, right?
Yeah, unless you stepped in a big lump on the street or something, you know. Otherwise, try to keep the body clean.
Right on, man. All right. Well, hey, I was gonna say get some rest, but don't get some rest. Do more stuff.
Do more stuff. Yeah, exactly. When they have a short amount of time left, I'm going to do as much as I can in the shortest amount of time I can because we only have a short amount of time left.
Yeah, man. Rock on, bud. Let them try to stop us. It's not going to work. Final thoughts, David?
Oh, I thought that was it. I thought we'd wrapped up, and I was like, thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it. And I will see you next video next time we both talk.
Sounds good to me, man. Don't be a stranger. Talk to you soon.